the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 423, recorded Friday, September 27th, 2019.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Peerless AV, driving technology through innovation.
And by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment.
This is AVWeek, your weekly wrap-up of audio, visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, my buddy and pal, Ms. Corey Schaefer from QSC. Welcome, ma'am.
Tim, thanks for having me. Good to see you again. It's been so long.
Yes, it's an old joke. We just got to hang out in Vegas not even 24 hours ago. So, and we'll talk about that and the Avixa experience that we both had. So, but first, let's kick this off from our friends over at AV Magazine, which I'll get to go hang out with in about 2 weeks now. Jeff Hastings from BrightSign is writing about the mic issue in voice-activated digital signage. He says, quote unquote, 25% of U.S. adults now have access to a smart speaker, according to voicebot.ai. Soon, it will be just as normal to talking to your oven or your light as a dog. I'm not sure that I'm 100% on the oven part, although there are getting to be smart ovens. Corey, one thing that we want to focus on here, Digital Signage Week, New York Digital Signage Week, which is an annual kind of federated group, a gathering of folks in and around the digital signage community, comes up in about 2-3 weeks' time. We'll be there. Our buddy Chris Nunnall will be there. Lots of folks from you guys will be there. Avixa Women are having an event that week. Jeff will be there with BrightSign. One thing about that event, though, that I find fascinating still is as you're walking around, Phil Menger from Show and Tell a number of years ago put together an app. You can walk around the city, at least Manhattan, and point this augmented reality app, and it will show you the technology behind every single display, right? So you're standing in the middle of Times Square, and you're putting your phone around and go, okay, that's a Daktronics, that's a Daktronics, that's a this, that, and the other. This is the owner, this is the technology behind it. One of the ones that we saw a number of years ago was an interactive piece of digital signage. Understanding that these displays are 20, 30, 100 feet away from you, but still you were able to interact with them. Some of the way that Jeff is talking about here is giving you the ability to interact from a voice standpoint with this digital signage, and the content is getting to the point where it can start, interacting with you.
Yeah.
Is this kind of something where we see it going, especially as he says, as a society, we're getting used to talking to technology?
Oh, I think we're all getting used to talking to technology. I mean, a recent study showed that like 50% of us are using voice to activate, just send an email or a text message on our mobile devices, right? We walk into the house, we say, Alexa, turn on the lights. So all of us are getting, it's just becoming very common, I think, and I just see that growing. The real challenge with digital signage, though, as he brings out in this article, is how it's so dependent on microphone, right? So in a crowded space, I mean, in Manhattan or a store, et cetera, how is the microphone going to be able to differentiate from you wanting to interact versus all the ambient? And that's always been a challenge in AV anyway, right? So in our smart devices, we have omni microphones because it really picks you up very far away and kind of in any direction. And in this environment, it's going to have to be more directional. So something like the microarray technology that was introduced a few years ago, that may work. But I guess I question the value of having it part of digital signage, and I would see greater value in tying it into our smartphones and using the microphone in our smartphones because it's close proximity, which we know helps. And I think people are comfortable with, this being a part of us.
One thing with that, though, and Jeff and BrightSign, they make the software that drives a lot of this digital signage, right? So he and his team could put in hooks, right, where it's a QR code or it's an app or something like that, giving the back end, the software, the ability to, let's say, have access to your microphone, right?
Right.
if you go on Facebook, right, and you use the Facebook camera, it will ask you for access to your microphone to
Right.
right. This would
Right.
be a very, very similar situation where you download, let's say, just use a generic Bright Sign app, and to interact with one of the displays that's around the big column for the ball in Times Square, then giving you the access to to communicate back and forth with a big giant avatar, or some sort of content that is talking to you or communicating with you in a kind of a back and forth scenario. So.
Yeah, and I think people are used to this being a part of them now. With people are now getting used to just using voice to activate things, and now this is just pulling it together in interaction. So I think putting the hooks in makes more sense than having dedicated microphones.
Do you think some of it also is the type of display? I mentioned New York Digital Signage Week. And we use New York a lot when it comes to digital signage as kind of it's a test bed a lot of times, but it is kind of at least in the States, some of the biggest and the most unique instances and uses for digital signage. I would say even more so than Vegas, even though Vegas is bright shiny lights.
Yeah.
Is it maybe it depends on the type of signage, because I'll go back to Times Square. Yes, there are ginormous ones 100 feet in the air, way away from you. But there's also digital signage at the bus stops, right, at the bus shelters. And there's also digital signage along the streets. And there's wayfinding digital signage that they've started putting up in the last few years. Maybe it's more if it's a close proximity to you and the display, without needing your cell phone or whatever, then you could employ some sort of beamforming technology microphone to where it's just directionally. You have to be right on axis with that display, otherwise it's not going to be you're not going to be able to interact with it.
Yeah, and in retail and in hospitality, I mean, we're all starting to interact more with, machines than we are humans. So I think this makes a lot of sense. I mean, last time I was in Vegas and stayed overnight, I didn't even check in with a person at the front desk. It was all done via a machine, getting my keys, everything, So we're just going to see that it's going to be fun to watch what happens here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next story comes to us from our friends over at AV Network. BenQ has launched the InstaShow wireless presentation system. We actually had the chance to get our hands on this, so check that out if you would. But what I wanted to say is bring this story around and use this as a jumping off point to talk about the state of wireless presentation systems in general. We have seen the rise of this, I'm going to say in the last 8-9 years, to the point where a number of manufacturers have these solutions. They vary, and they vary from being completely software driven to being completely hardware driven, meaning they've got a puck and they've got some sort of device that you plug in, whether that's USB, it's HDMI, or it's both.
Yeah.
Or it's software driven. Where do we see this system or this market segment going in the next couple of years? Is it going to continue to be a hybrid where this group over here is just software and this is just hardware, or is the hardware going to go away?
So I think we're going to see less and less hardware for sure. And I think that, work is changing, right? So there's so much more collaboration. And when I read this one, I think you have 16 people on, right, on a screen, which was, amazing. But so lots of collaboration. And then more importantly, the spaces we work in. So, you see all these spaces where we're wanting to work from anywhere. So it needs, in my opinion, I think we're going to see it be more software based. I was talking with some people over at WeWork, and they have these spaces where they have all kinds of guests coming in, and they're trying to have a great experience. Well, how do you accommodate it when you've got hardware, software, et cetera, and you just don't know what they're going to come in with? So they're trying to build rooms that can accommodate, kind of virtually everything that users are using or requesting, and we're going to see more collaboration, costs come down, and more software based, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And not to be confused, I understand there is also a hardware base to the receiving end of software parts. I'm talking about the actual the elements that are plugged into your laptop. So,
at home, I was going to just say at home, we do a lot of sharing of content, based on vacation. Like I just recently did a vacation. There were 3 of us that went along, and we were literally taking our photos and video and just throwing them up on the screen, wirelessly. So, I mean, it's what's happening at home is definitely, being pulled into the workplace.
Yeah, we used to do that with slide decks, folks. So. We just do it and flip it up there. So this last story comes to us from actually AVNation. Pinnaca is a global video communications and unified communications software service, and it's a managed service provider. They sent us a press release this week talking about their UC managed services for Zoom. And what's interesting about this, at least to me, and when we posted this, I had a number of people email me and say, "Hey, we do this too." Great, send me the information because I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
They have it's a managed service provider for visual communications, i.e., video communications, like so UCC products, and they're doing it with Zoom now. So it's a Zoom video communications MSP. Corey, I want to talk about this for a second. Because the MSP, the managed service provider sector of the AV industry, seems to be growing, at least to me. And that is one of those areas where folks who debate AV as a service can absolutely debate it over here. This is where it's happening, right? One of my dearest friends who used to be an AV, right? He was a rep for Sennheiser. He was a rep for QSC, and he has since left pretty much the AV industry, and he has started his own company where he is a voice MSP, right? He provides voice services, he provides network backup, and all of this computer help. And I'm looking at the sales process that he goes through. I'm looking at the terminology he uses when he sells and when he talks with his clients and when he's providing support. It's really similar to what AV providers are talking with their clients now, making uptime and making sure that products are being deployed correctly and making sure that everything's on the network and they have the access that they need for maintenance and providing the back end support. Are we slowly but surely as an industry moving towards a service provider model, regardless of what anybody's going to argue about AV as a service? I don't care what you call it. We are becoming an MSP.
We are, and slowly but surely we're coming along, right? So we've got, there are many formal integrators that have embraced managed services, and others are scratching their head about how do they get in, that reoccurring revenue model, et cetera. Our industry is looking at new ways to generate revenue because the margins in hardware is shrinking. We see less hardware going into projects, more software-based applications. We were just talking about it with wireless presentations. And most importantly, though, is what the customer wants, right? Listening to customers. And the customers today want to have great service that they don't have to wait for, and they need it 24/7 because of how their employees are working. Their employees are working they're not typically working the typical 9 to 5 days anymore, right? So this is really offering a true value of service. So if there's an issue, somebody can pick that up. And so I think our industry, we're going to see this grow tremendously. Some people don't know how to do it, but your friend that you were just talking about, I sit on a council with CompTIA. And that is exactly what happened there. They used to be PBX suppliers, hardware suppliers, et cetera. Most of them are all small managed service providers today. And that, and they had to learn their way through it. And that's happening now in the AV world as well.
And for those integrators who are scared of this and who don't maybe not know how to do it, he has come along and he is not he's not the biggest MSP in the Midwest. But he understands the recurring revenue model, right? And the folks that he's learning from, and he's getting mentored by, you add a client here, you add 2 clients here, and that recurring revenue eventually will end up, that will be the basis for your, you supplying the livelihood for you and your employees and then from there you work off of the projects, right? He has some folks, here up and down the Mississippi, who they're bringing in, $10,000 to $20,000 a month, for a small company, right? It's a company of like 3 folks, not his, but that's one of these folks that he's dealing with, and they hit $20,000 a month in probably a span of 2 to 3 years. That's not insignificant. It's not $1 million a month, but it's enough for you and your 3 or 4 folks to kind of build on, and then again get more and more projects. So,
and great margins, and you stay in touch with your client on a regular basis, so it's not just a one and done project. I mean, there are just so many reasons why our industry will adopt it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last subject, I guess, here. It's not really a story. I don't have a link to provide for you, but I was incredibly blessed this week. I had a very interesting week. If you were in Canada or New Jersey or Vegas, and you didn't see me, I'm sorry, I was in your neighborhood. If you'll be in Miami or London or New York in the next 3 weeks, you can, make sure we hook up. But Corey and I got to hang out yesterday in Las Vegas with AVWeek at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, which is where the Golden Knights play. If you have listened to this program for any length of time, you understand that I am a huge hockey fan, a huge St. Louis Blues fan, and a Chicago Bears fan, but that's not part of this story. As someone who has watched hockey the majority of my life, let's say, it was the late 70s when I first saw my first hockey game. I got the chance to do a presentation and to
on the ice. You were on the ice.
Freaking ice. Yeah, that was on the ice of an NHL arena. That was something else. But it was part of AVWeek's experience tours, right? Back in the spring, they did a tour with my buddy Cindy Davis. She got to do the exact same thing, but at Mercedes-Benz Center, Mercedes-Benz Stadium there in Atlanta. During the fall, they did it at the T-Mobile Arena. I will say this: the folks at AVWeek, the last 3 or 4 years, there have been some shakeups and there have been some folks coming and going. The team that they have now for this event and for these events, and the folks that are really trying to connect with the members, have really done a good job. One person I'm going to pick out just in general, his name is Johnny Greco, and Johnny is in charge of the fan experience at T-Mobile Arena for the Golden Knights. Right, he works for the Golden Knights, not for T-Mobile. He made a comment yesterday during our talk about listening to the customer, listening to the audience, and giving them the experience that they want. Understanding that in Vegas, you have any number, let's just say 100 or 200 ways you could spend your money on any given night. Well, for 40 some odd nights a year, the Golden Knights would like you to spend your money there instead of going to see Celine Dion or going to see a Cirque show. And his attitude in trying to connect with the audience and giving them the experience that they want was remarkable. And yes, the technology was there, but what I really walked away with was the fact that the folks at AVWeek are really trying to get really good people who were designing and providing unique experience for folks. Yes, the technology, but also, the mindset of creating an experience.
Tim, what was really cool about it, you had a panel, and Johnny Greco talked about the user, his audience's experience, and the questions that came from the group that was there, they were all directed at Johnny. So, it was really cool to see the technology, of course, but to really understand, how do you adopt on the fly maybe the song that you've chosen that evening? How do you how do you shake it up to make sure you don't lose your fans and because he recognizes that everybody has something in their hand that they could be tweeting out, good or bad, and they're following their fans digitally, they're following them in the venue itself, et cetera, and making adjustments. Not only was he a passionate and great speaker, but what a fascinating, he calls himself a storyteller, right?
Yeah, a storyteller that has, a big hunk of ice as part of his canvas.
Yeah.
And the folks, the technology part of that and the back end of that was the support as well, from Daktronics, who provides the ribbons. If you've been to any sort of stadium here in the States, the ribbons around the bowl, and then Christie Digital, who they're not the only ones who do ice mapping, but they're the ones who do a number of them. Did the ones there in Vegas. They were there, as well as the folks from 3G, and one of the production heads for UFC was on stage with me as well. And then before then, I actually got a chance to talk with the head of IT for T-Mobile about some of the challenges that he has. And yeah, I don't want his job.
No, but he was interesting too, because he said he's got 10 gig in there, and he's not even touching 5 of it at this point, right?
Yeah, and the main reasoning he had behind that was the fact that folks aren't utilizing it. Utilizing their cell service, which, because of that, and again, goes back to talking and listening to your clients and your customers, based on the feedback that they got, they deployed even more cell antennas within the building. I think he said on every single floor there are X numbers, because it's a ginormous steel building, and you're not going to get service in there unless they do these things. And so, yeah, they've even deployed even more since they opened up 4 years ago now, I think. And
on one of the levels, they actually have some areas for fans to be able to go ahead and place their order for food or beverage, and then have it waiting for them when they show up. So, very cool.
All about the experience. So,
yeah.
If you get a chance, even if you're not a hockey fan, they do other things there, including the UFC fights, apparently. But they check out the T-Mobile. It was a really, really cool experience. And if you get a chance to hang out with AVIXA next year, I believe this was the last experience tour for this year. But if you get a chance, I know they're working on some stuff in different parts of the country as well for next year. So check those out. So. All right, madam. Thank you so much. Good to see you yesterday. Also here today. So
great to see you, my friend.
How do people get a hold of you or QSC if they are so inclined?
So QSC.com, Corey.Schaefer@QSC, or you can find me on the Twitter and on LinkedIn as well.
Very cool. For me, for Tim Albright, don't follow me on the Twitters, although in about a week, I will be in London and I will be at Tottenham Stadium with my beloved Chicago Bears. So if you want a mixture of football and AV, that would be a time to follow me if you like.
Hey, and that stadium has a ton of QSIS.
Does it?
It does.
Okay. Trying to get a hold of AVISPL is the integrator. I'm trying to get an interview with them while I'm over there. So we'll see how that plays out. So, but yeah, more than importantly, go by the website if you would please, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. While you're there, check out our supporter section. These are the folks who help us financially, help us bring you AVWeek and ResiWeek and the host of new programs that we have coming out. So all that and more at AVNation.tv. It's AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. As all the time we have for AV Week.